So friends, today we're going to talk about Emaar, the one from Eagle Heels. Usually I don't talk about projects, but this one has gotten so hyped that I think I really need to say a few words. I think this video will make you consider some important key nuances of this project. I'll go over all the aspects so you can make truly well-informed decisions. My channel is about investments, so naturally we'll be analyzing this project from that perspective. And of course at the end I'll tell you what I would do in your place if I wanted to buy. I really wanted to buy into this project, so watch the video until the end. I think it will be as useful for you as possible. Friends, if you want to buy apartments at prices lower than those offered by the developer, which in general any investor wants, then I have a really great solution for you. Together with a group of investors, we enter good projects that I personally select and recommend, and all of us investors get very unique terms there. How is that possible? It's because we buy a significant number of apartments from the developers all at once. This could be 10 or even 20 apartments, depending on the size of the group that comes together. I already have a number of investors who join me in good projects and make money from them. And so I invite you to join this group as well. If you want to earn money, have the funds, and are ready to move in this direction, then follow the link in this video. I will contact you and add you to the group. Accordingly, you will not only get great prices, the very best prices that you would never get if you came on your own, with a friend, or with anyone else. You will also get access to some really great projects, and you'll be able to join in with a group of investors just like yourself. So join in, I'll make sure you get the very best. And the first important nuance of this project is the land plots. The developer received 2 large plots of land, and in my opinion, to be honest, well, to put it mildly, they're not very good. Because in Tbilisi, well, near the airport, it's a very large area that's undeveloped and not landscaped at all. Of course, they're promising to make it all amazing, but again, we'll see. In Batumi, it's also near the airport, and it's also a bit of a swamp. Let's put it this way. Well, maybe it's not quite as swampy now, but they'll still have to bring in a lot of fill there. It's a plot around the river, and there's a huge amount of work needed to make it look at least somewhat decent. Plus, there are also sewage treatment facilities nearby, and honestly, it's unclear when or even if they'll be removed. At the moment, these treatment facilities stink up the whole of New Batumi, and the smell is strong and frequent. Depending on which way the wind blows, people either enjoy it on one side or the other. So these plots are for those with particular tastes, but of course, with proper funding and a huge investment, something could come of it. But initially, all of this looks, well, let's just say, not so great. The second thing that raised a red flag for me is that the developer started taking advance payments before even getting a construction permit. It doesn't seem like there's anything illegal about it. Many people do it this way here, but still, when they tell you, we're so cool, we've completed so many projects, we build everything super well. But in the end, we enter the market and start selling apartments, taking advance payments, even though we don't have a finalized product or a construction permit. So, in my opinion, that's just not okay. And by following the link in the description, you can get a file with the 9 most popular projects for investment. There, I go over the pros and cons so that you can better understand what these projects are really worth, where you can make money and where you can't. Follow the link. I think you'll find it extremely useful. Now, let's calculate your profit. Let's say you bought at $2,500 per square meter and want to sell at $3,000. So basically your profit is $500 per square meter. Now, if you make that $500 per square meter over 3 years, that's about a 7% annual return. Well, it's not exactly a lot or super interesting, but at least it's something. If the project isn't built in 3 years, but takes at least 5 years, then you end up with about a 4% annual return. And if it's a huge project like the ones they tend to build here and it takes 10 years to complete, you end up with a 2% annual return. So with that kind of price increase, honestly, in my opinion, it's just not an interesting proposition at all. It's easier to just put your money in the bank. So for it to be worthwhile for you to invest money over such a long construction period, you need at least a certain time horizon. Or rather, not just years, but at least a price increase of about $1,500 or more. So if you bought it for $2,500, you should be able to sell it for $4,000. And later in this video, we'll figure out whether it's actually realistic to sell this project for $4,000. Friends, did you know that I have great investment projects where you can invest your money? You can earn well both from price appreciation and from rental income. I share these projects with those who contact me through the link in the description. And of course, not everyone is interested in investments, so my team and I also select secondary market properties for you. Secondary market properties below market value so that you can buy well and then easily sell later. This is more suitable for those who want to preserve their money, to preserve their capital. For those who aren't particularly interested in price appreciation or profit, for such people we select great projects and, in general, good liquid options for living and preserving your funds. So write to me using the link in the description, I'll be happy to chat with you. And now I know that many will start saying like, Emaar, yes, no problem, yes. $4,000 per square meter, yes, such a developer, yes, everything is just perfect. But guys, let's think about it. First of all, this is Georgia, not Dubai and not some other locations where there might be growth. There is a market here, there are market prices, and no matter what kind of developer comes in, famous or not, they will have to play within this more or less market range. And in Tbilisi, if you are now building at $2,000 per square meter, even without furniture, but with furniture, I think, well, my assumption is that it would come out to about $2,500. This price is normal for a comfort class project considering the small scale of construction. But here, the scale of construction is just insane, and you need to understand that as well. At $2,000 per square meter, the developer manages to build the building, maybe arrange a small area, and so on. Here, not only do you need to build the building, but you also have to create embankments, walking areas, landscaping, infrastructure. There is a huge amount of things promised here. And honestly, I have no idea how all this can be done for $2,000 per square meter at this point. Maybe I don't know the math or the developer's plans. I'm willing to admit that, of course. Maybe later they want to sell not for 2, but for 6, for example. But to me, it seems a bit strange that most developers are building at these prices. Just regular comfort class, but they promise to build premium for that money. So, from this perspective, the low price, in my opinion, isn't entirely justified. The next fact that's definitely worth considering, in such a huge project, the developer doesn't regulate assignments in any way. What does that mean? Here, the terms for demolition and purchase are quite attractive. That is, the initial payment is 10%. And you, as the apartment owner, yes, well, naturally with subsequent payments. So when the initial payment is so low, it usually attracts a lot of enthusiasts. People who want to make a quick buck just to earn some money. Why? Because, well, it seems easy. I'll just put down 10%. 10% is something a lot of people usually have. I won't pay it off completely, and then I'll resell it for a profit. This is a very, very common behavior model on the market among those who want to make a quick buck. But what these enthusiasts underestimate is, and by the way, in Dubai, in Thailand, and in many other locations, these enthusiasts later ended up losing money in droves and sometimes huge amounts. Did they lose money? Why does this happen? This happens because, in this case, the developer does not regulate the assignment of rights in any way. That is, the majority of buyers who go to purchase a property at the new build or construction stage are people who go directly to the developer. This is understandable user behavior. People go to the developer and buy a new product because there is an association in their minds. I want to buy a new build, so I go to the developer. The percentage of people who go to buy assignment contracts is very small. Why is it so small? Because again, people don't have a clear habit. That is, if I'm going to buy a new build, I go to the developer. But if I'm going to buy an assignment, then who is this person? There are very few such people. These are usually people who know they want to buy super cheap. They're always searching for something. In short, it's a very small percentage of people compared to the total number who buy new builds. And here is such a person. Someone who bought cheaper in order to make money naturally puts their apartment up for sale, for example, in 6 months. And he doesn't get the volume of offers that would be necessary for his apartment to sell. And if there are 1, 2, 3, 10, 15 such people, it wouldn't be a big deal. But if there are a lot of such people, and when assignments aren't regulated, there end up being many of them, they start doing one very clear, simple thing. They start lowering the price. Why? Because they need to make the next payments. As a rule, this kind of audience doesn't have that money because they jumped in quickly to make a profit. And for them, the only simple solution, the only way out they see is to lower the price. And that's why the price starts to fall. So, for example, the developer might be selling to you for $2,500 or $3,000, but assignments can be at the initial sale price, for example, at $2,000 per square meter. Or, well, the situation can be completely different. And this happens in almost every project as of today. That is, you take any project and you'll find this kind of story there. Yes, some developers try to delay this by prohibiting assignments. So you bought into a project and you can't resell it until construction is finished. But there's also a big downside here, because by the time construction is completed, you have a huge number of those very assignments. And when there are a lot of them, that's also a bad thing. So at one moment you suddenly have a huge supply of identical products on the market, in essence the same apartments. This also causes prices to drop sharply at that moment. So both approaches are bad. Lack of regulation is bad, and a complete ban is also bad. A total ban is also bad. What's important here is to find a middle ground, so that assignments are released gradually, with regulation by the developer. Then this process will work properly. I'm telling you that in such large major projects, this aspect absolutely must be present. If it's not there, then as a rule you get the drawbacks I mentioned earlier. If you're buying a project, especially in Batumi, I have an article you can check out. It covers the pros and cons of construction quality in various projects. There, I clearly show what is done and how and what materials are used. Follow the link and read it. I think you'll find it useful. Here's another very interesting point. The developer sells you the apartment without furniture. At the same time, the showroom and what you like, what you're buying, the impression you get, all of that is basically the showroom you come to see. And there, not only is the furniture beautifully arranged, but also all the dishes, all the vases, everything is set up so you get the impression of a stylish, beautiful, fully equipped apartment. Essentially, that's what you're buying. You're buying the impression you get. But when you sign the contract, it says without furniture. And to me, it's strange. Why not just set the price with the furniture included and sell it to the person with the furniture? When I asked what the price of the furniture would be, they told me that until construction is finished, they don't know what the price of the furniture will be. I won't speculate, but I have a suspicion that the main profit margin will actually be in this furniture. In other words, they'll sell you the furniture for 2 or 3 times what it should actually cost. And there's another problem here as well. Some people, most likely, especially if the price of this furniture is quite high, won't want to buy it. Which means exactly that these same apartments will end up being furnished with all sorts of random things. So if the developer ultimately sets a high price for this beautiful furniture they showed in the showrooms, most likely we'll see a huge number of apartments furnished in a very basic way. Why? Because people tend to save money, and if they bought the apartment, so to speak, for a low price, they'll also furnish it inexpensively. That's why the beautiful final images you see now in the renderings in the showroom and so on might simply not become reality. So for me, it's a very strange decision by the developer to sell the apartment this way, without furniture, if it's supposed to be a unified concept of a complete high-quality product. I'd like to say a few words about the layouts. The layouts are actually very good. I believe that layouts of this type or similar formats should be almost everywhere. They should be well thought out and proper. Another advantage, of course, is that there are no small studios, because I think there are already way too many of them on the market. And the 1.1 and 2.1 formats, they are generally proper and good. But when it comes to the apartment fittings, there are big questions, believe me. And next we'll talk about rentals and how this will affect the rental market. The next thing the developer puts as the main priority, so to speak, is the concept. A city within a city. Supposedly we don't need anything else. Everything will be inside. In other words, we're building all the infrastructure, we'll have our own gated area, and we're kind of independent from everyone else. Okay, that's possible. But first of all, you have to understand that this isn't the only project in Tbilisi. As of today, projects in Tbilisi with the city within a city concept are already emerging. And by the way, they're not any worse, they're also quite strong. They also have infrastructure, and there are plenty of interesting things there as well. And most importantly, they're located much closer to the popular and expensive districts in Tbilisi. So their location is much better. And they have the same city within a city concept. And by the way, their prices are lower. So that's also quite an important fact. Plus, since there isn't such a huge volume of construction, they're likely to be built faster as well. Of course, I can't predict it 100%, but it feels like they'll definitely be built faster than this massive project. And the scale here is just insane. And this insane scale actually brings a lot of downsides. I've mentioned this to you before, and I'll mention it again. There are a lot of downsides, including when it comes to exiting the project and various other nuances. Friends, I hope it's no secret to you that often new builds in Georgia, and not just in Georgia, but in many locations, are more expensive than the secondary market. So I've prepared a clear chart for you where you can see by location in Batumi which new builds are more expensive than the secondary market. Why is that? Because if you buy a new build at a higher price than the secondary market, you're automatically at a loss. In other words, you're buying a product that when you resell it, you'll be selling at a loss. Well, in the best case, you'll break even, of course, but more often people end up selling at a loss. So, in order for you to more or less understand what is below the secondary market and what is above it, I recommend you follow the link and take a look. I think you'll find it useful. According to the developer, the project will take 7 to 8 years to complete in its entirety, which, of course, I find hard to believe. My personal expectation for a construction project of this scale is more than 10 years. That's just my personal opinion. But again, someone might say, Evgeny, you could be wrong. Okay, I could be wrong. But what I see today is that there isn't even a construction permit yet. In other words, if you want to build quickly and within some short, tight deadlines, especially if you want to complete it in 3 to 4 years, it would be good to start sales only when you already have all of this in place. And let me remind you, every year there are delays. This is a very significant drawback for your profitability. Yes, if you're making, say, $1,500 to $2,000 extra per square meter, that's certainly great. Given today's price levels, I don't think that's the case, and it's worth discussing the management company separately. The developer claims that there will be a management company there which will handle it. They will be renting out all of these. If you look at examples of the world's best companies like Ambridge, Hospitality, and so on, these are companies that rent out clear, well-equipped, standardized rooms. Why standardized? Because it's clear how to set the price. The person renting also knows exactly what they'll get. That's also very important. That's how all good global companies operate. But here the developer does not furnish the rooms with furniture. This means that some people will furnish their rooms through the developer while others will do it themselves. They'll buy whatever they can afford. As a result, the developer will end up renting out a huge number of mismatched rooms with different finishes. And the prices for these rooms will inevitably have to be different. Because, excuse me, if I put in beautiful furniture and made a nice room, that's one story. If I stuffed it with all sorts of junk, that's a different price and a completely different story. I have no idea how the developer is going to rent out such a large number of rooms with different finishes, regulate the prices, and manage all of this at the same time. Maybe, of course, they may have their own mechanisms for regulating all of this, but again, this situation seems strange to me because it's not about clear, good management. We'll see how it works, but again, I absolutely don't understand this aspect. If you're buying an apartment, it would be good for you to know what to look for. It's better to pay attention to the contract with the developer in order to protect yourself as much as possible from potential risks. That's why I've prepared an article for you. The top 8 most important points in a contract with a developer. After reading it, I think you'll find it extremely useful, both for yourself and for your wallet, so you don't get caught out because some points can be very disadvantageous for you. In the end, when you want to sell, realize this property or take other actions with it. So read the article, it's free for you. I think that you'll thank me later. The next parameter that really surprised me is the poor development of the project. What do I mean by that? You have a general large rendering, there are models in the office, let's call them models. There are a couple of drawn images showing what it will look like in terms of the surroundings. There is a showroom, which is also an important plus, but there is no clear, understandable, final... Let's put it this way, there's no understanding of how everything will look, how the infrastructure will appear, where the paths will be, or what the finished final appearance will be like. In other words, all these important nuances and details are missing. So, the project is being sold in general terms. I think this is partly related to the building permit, because when a developer receives a construction permit, everything should already be worked out in detail. But here, there is just a broad and very general overview, completely lacking in any specific or fine details. When such a large-scale project is launched, to be honest, I expected the project to be more thoroughly developed. Maybe someone will argue that this is okay, that this is how it should be, but I believe it should be different. As for what I think will happen with the actual construction, usually here, developers get a building permit within a year to a year and a half. Then, in my estimation, it will take another 4 to 5 years to build the first phase. And the next phase is, I don't know, maybe another 3, maybe another 5 years. So we're already looking at a total construction period of about 10 years for the entire project. I'm probably taking 10 years as the minimum time frame for all of this. The fact that banks aren't financing the project is also a bit strange to me, because when such a large-scale project and such a powerful developer come in, it seems to me that it would make sense. It would have been a good idea to do so. That would include bank guarantees and cater to different people's needs, because not everyone can afford to pay in installments, considering that it's quite a large payment. Some people would prefer a smaller payment, a payment with a mortgage and all sorts of other nuances, but that's not the case here. I won't say that this is 100% bad, but again, considering the scale and significance of the product, it would be good to have it. And now the developer himself is telling us about a 50% increase in the overall project cost. They mention a relatively small, conditionally minimal figure for how much the project will become more expensive. They expect the project to become 50% more expensive. We'll talk more about this in a moment. Regarding the prices, but again, I have little faith in these numbers, considering the facts I've mentioned and the fact that there will be a huge number of assignments. It is expected. I won't predict with 100% certainty that it will happen, but based on my feelings, it is expected, because there is a huge volume of construction, which logically indicates that there will also be quite a lot of people who will want to resell. And since no one is regulating them, this could become a serious problem. So, to sum up a bit, I think that among the downsides, this is the first major drawback for me. It's really this whole story with assignments, that there could be a lot of them, and that's a highly likely scenario. And it's unlikely that anyone will come out with a good profit. The second downside for me is the unclear cost of furniture, meaning how much will it be? Because, well, again, this affects many other processes, including future rentals and so on. The lack of a clear concept from the management company. I also think this is a very significant drawback that deserves attention, because the investors who are supposed to buy from you usually prefer to buy when there is good rental yield. With this kind of management company concept, I'm not sure it will be there. I didn't like the rather weak development of the project in terms of the final renderings, yes. Having some beautiful images is generally not bad, but I expected more from a developer of this level. And still, I personally believe that there is a high probability of a really long construction period, which will also have a significant impact on the final profitability. And what about the advantages? As for the advantages, we do have a developer who has already completed more than one project in different locations, in different countries. I think that's definitely a big plus as well. The developer is trying to create some kind of grand scale project with the redevelopment of such a huge area, both in Tbilisi and in Batumi. I also think that's a plus. Again, it's a plus if they actually succeed. That's probably the main thing that, in my opinion, can be pointed out. And also the layouts are good. Good layouts still aren't found in every project. That can also be considered a significant advantage. And who is this project for? I still think this project is more for enthusiasts, for fans. And there are such people who really like to invest in something big and large scale. And in their opinion, that always equals profit, but in reality, that's definitely not always the case. But there are some people who really believe that. I think they will be very interested in this project. I think this project should suit those who love country living. That is perhaps despite the fact that one downside is still the airport. It creates additional background noise. And in Tbilisi, there's also a highway that runs quite close by. Well, it's more or less, of course, but still I think there will be some background noise from it. But for those who love country living in general, I think it could be suitable. And of course, I think people who love a bit of adventure, who want to jump in quickly and make some money, will also go there. Why? Because the overall hype around the project, the whole, let's say, story when everyone is rushing in and buying, really attracts people who also want to join in. I'm with the crowd, I run in and I buy. Such people will also go there en masse. But of course, there are downsides to this story as well. That is, with this mass participation, with this huge number of people who are supposedly buying a cool, super safe investment product, Then there are a lot of people who try to exit but can't do it. And there have been problems with exiting such projects in Dubai as well. A huge number of people got stuck there and couldn't even get back the money they had invested. And there were many such cases in Thailand as well. How it will be here, we'll see. I don't know. It will, of course, become clear. Based on the actions the developer will take, but I definitely wouldn't consider this an unambiguous advantage. If you want to make money by investing in real estate, I would recommend you check out my article, The 7 Most Popular Projects for Investment in Batumi. You can follow the link in the description. There I review popular projects, their pros and cons, and I think it will also be useful for you to take a look, maybe from a different perspective, maybe to see those as well. The facts that I present to you there are, in general, useful. Follow the link and see what I did. If I really wanted to buy this project, I promised to answer the question. And of course, I'll answer the first one. What would I do? I would wait for the completion of the first phase of construction. What would that give me? I would look at the final quality, what kind of infrastructure there is, and what is actually available. That's the first thing I would do. I would look at how many assignments there are and how many people want to sell. And based on what I said earlier, there's a high probability that there will be quite a few. So there's even a high chance that you'll get it either at the price, very close to what people paid at the start, or maybe just a little higher with some kind of premium. But considering that you're coming in after 3 to 4 years with no risks, even a small premium that you might have to pay, basically the starting prices are not a downside for you. On the contrary, they're a plus. So if you end up paying $200 or $300 more per square meter than someone did at the start after 3 to 4 years, I think that's awesome. Although, again, I'll repeat, there's still a chance that, well, let me put it this way, there have been projects, and not just one, where people who bought at the very beginning, after 3, 4, or 5 years, later ended up selling at the same price they bought in at the start. And you might think these were some small projects. No, these are large-scale projects. What's the advantage of this strategy for you? The advantage is very obvious. If you come in after the completion of the first phase of construction, you understand 2 important things. If it turns out that the project really did appreciate significantly, and you buy in later, the second phase of construction, for example, you can be confident that the second phase will appreciate just as well, and you'll make a great profit on it. So from this perspective, there are no risks for you either. You buy into the second phase. If you saw that the first phase increased in price, then the second one will also obviously most likely go up as well, and you definitely won't end up at a loss. And on the other hand, if you buy into this project after the completion of the first phase and see a large number of assignments, again, if you really like this project, you can get it at a super low price, almost at the starting price. Why? Because there are so many assignments and people simply won't be able to sell off such a volume anyway. And you'll realize that, frankly, you won't make any money on this. But if you get in now, then of course you take on all those risks I mentioned to you. If you want to pick a project to earn money from renting it out, specifically from renting, I've prepared a clear chart for you, where I've mapped out the different neighborhoods, showing what kind of rental yield you can expect in each area, more or less, and what the returns are. This is based approximately on the projects that are being built in those neighborhoods. You can follow the link in the description, download this chart, and take a look. I think you'll find it clear, visual, and most importantly, useful. Now we've finally reached the topic of price to discuss such an important point. Just how much can all this splendor cost? Let's put it this way. Right now, you're looking at around $2,000 per square meter without furniture. With furniture, all this splendor, I think my forecast, I'm not saying this is 100% certain, but my prediction is that it will probably cost around $2,500. If it ends up costing more, I probably won't be too surprised. If it turns out to be cheaper, I'll be surprised as well, because after all, my logical conclusion is, why exactly is this not being provided to you? Right now, the price of the furniture is set with a good margin so that the developer can make a profit from it. But again, I could be wrong. This is just my assumption. So let's do a rough calculation based on the price of $2,500, that your apartment with furniture will cost $2,500 in the end, and you'll want to sell it for $3,500. So when you're buying now at $2,500, that's one target audience. This is the target audience that wants and buys comfort class projects. Its main characteristic is that it's large. There are many of them. In other words, there are quite a lot of people who can afford to buy at $2,500, including domestic demand. That is, quite a few locals and newcomers are buying specifically at this price. But you want to resell at a profit? and that's normal. And you'll be reselling at 3,500. But when you resell at 3,500, that's a completely different target audience. This is already a target audience that buys business class projects. Its main characteristic is that there are far fewer of them. This audience is much smaller than the comfort class audience. And most importantly, when it comes to advertising to attract such a client, it costs significantly more, several times more. Well, let me put it this way, that's approximately what it costs the developer to acquire such a client. It's about $10,000 to $20,000 per transaction just to get a person to actually make the purchase. That's roughly the amount you need to spend on advertising, marketing stuff, and all that hassle just to get this person to physically come and buy. At that price point, if we take accordingly a higher price, say $4,000 to $4,500 per square meter, then of course marketing expenses also increase proportionally. Now what's interesting is that when you want to resell, by the way, this is an indirect reason why assignments happen, many people keep lowering and lowering the price and still can't sell because they're trying to sell at a business class price, but they don't have the money to attract those clients and they don't even invest in that process. So what does a person do who bought and wants to resell through assignment? They post their single ad on one or a few websites. The problem is that the clients and the traffic on these sites, these popular platforms, make up maybe 5, at best 10% of the total traffic. Because developers attract clients through Facebook, through Google, and through agents. Such huge marketing budgets, constant motivation for agents. To put it in another way, professional developers have carefully built an entire sophisticated marketing machine specifically to attract high-end clients with that kind of significant money. When you eventually start selling your services at that very same price point, you simply do not have that powerful marketing machine behind you. Apart from 1 or 2 listings and a couple of agents who usually aren't very motivated and only make a half-hearted effort, either because you haven't motivated them enough or for some other reasons, you have nothing else. So essentially, when people try to sell on their own at the same price as developers, at an increased price, at a significantly increased price, they find that they can't do it. They can't do it for the reasons mentioned above. They would need to invest huge budgets. They need a whole army of specialists to attract a large flow of clients. And from this stream of clients, expensive clients by the way, some do buy at such prices. I mean at prices of $3,500, $4,500 and so on. In general, the idea is very simple. The point is that it's not difficult to sell at a price of $2,000. There are a lot of clients and the market is quite large, both external and internal. When we set a price above $3,500 to $4,500, the domestic market buys very weakly at that price. So you have to attract these clients from outside, and these external clients are very expensive to acquire. And you are left with 2 options. Either, like a developer, you invest a lot of money in advertising, and then you find and close these clients, or you will be forced to lower the price, which is what we see with most projects. The price will go down. Therefore, this is also a very important issue here, reselling at a higher increased price. And since the developer will not help you with this, there are developers, though very few, who do help with this. But since this developer does not state that they will help, that is the whole story. All the responsibility for your earnings will rest on your shoulders. And how you will handle it? I think it's better to think about it right away rather than later. Friends, as you have already understood, I am quite skeptical about such highly hyped and overblown projects. And in my opinion, the arguments I have presented to you are quite objective. They are not made up, not pulled out of thin air, as people like to say. And the facts I pointed out to you about the difficulties with reselling and assignments, these are all real facts present in the market. They exist in the market right now. You can check this in any residential complex. You can do it yourself, or you can call me and I'll show you directly. So these are not just my own thoughts. They're not some assumptions or conclusions I've come up with, and so on. This is what's actually happening in reality in almost every project. And I can easily confirm this for you if you call or write to me. But if you do call or write to me, you'll get a lot more useful and pleasant information as well, including some interesting projects too, and possibly some unconventional solutions for your problems and tasks. So, write to me. I'll be glad to talk with you. See you soon.